The Day the Earth Stood Still is a 2008 American science fiction film, a remake of the 1951 film of the same name. The screenplay is based on the 1940 classic science fiction short story, Farewell to the Master, by Harry Bates, and the 1951 screenplay adaptation by Edmund H. North, directed by Scott Derrickson and starring Keanu Reeves as Klaatu. This version replaces the Cold War theme of nuclear warfare with the contemporary issue of humankind's environmental damage to the planet. It follows Klaatu, an alien sent to try to change human behavior or eradicate them from Earth. The film was originally scheduled for release on May 9, 2008, but was released on a rollout schedule beginning December 12, 2008, screening in both conventional and IMAX theaters. The critical reviews were mainly negative, with 186 reviews collected by Rotten Tomatoes showing only 21% of them were positive. Typically, the film was found to be heavy on special effects, but without a coherent story at its base. In its opening week, the film took top spot at the U.S. box office and went on to gross over $233 million worldwide. The Day the Earth Stood Still was released on home video on April 7, 2009. Plot: in 1928, a solitary mountaineer encounters a glowing sphere. He loses consciousness, and when he wakes, the sphere has gone, and there is a scar on his hand where a sample of his DNA has been taken. In the present day, a rapidly moving object is detected beyond Jupiter's orbit and forecast to impact Manhattan. The United States government hastily assembles a group of scientists, including Drive, Helen Benson, to formulate a survival plan. The object is measured to be moving at 30,000 kilometers per second, enough to destroy nearly all life on Earth, but as it nears the planet, the object slows down just before impact and is revealed to be a large spherical spaceship, which lands gently in Central Park. The sphere is quickly surrounded by police and a heavily armed, hostile, and rather chaotic U.S. military force. An alien emerges and Helen moves forward to greet it, but amidst the confusion, a soldier shoots the alien. A gigantic robot then appears that temporarily disables everything in the vicinity. The alien voices the command, Klaatu Barada Nikta, to shut down the robot's defensive response. A military surgeon discovers that the alien body is actually a bioengineered spacesuit, composed of placenta-like material covering a human-like being. The being quickly ages into Klaatu, who looks like the mountaineer from the opening scene of the film. Klaatu informs Secretary of Defense Regina Jackson that he is a representative of a group of alien civilizations, sent to talk to the leaders of Earth at a United Nations conference in the city. Jackson instead orders that Klaatu be sent to a secure location for interrogation. Klaatu manages to escape, and Helen and her stepson Jacob give him a ride out of the area. The trio are pursued and harassed by the authorities for the rest of the film. The presence of the sphere, and others like it around the world, causes a widespread panic. The military launch a drone attack on the sphere, but are thwarted by the robot. They cautiously enclose the robot and transport it to Virginia. Klaatu meets with another alien, Mr. Wu, who has lived on Earth for 70 years. Wu tells Klaatu that he has found the human race to be destructive and unwilling to change, which matches Klaatu's experience. Klaatu decides that the planet, with its rare ability to sustain complex life, must be cleansed of humans to ensure that it can survive. Klaatu orders smaller spheres to collect specimens of animal species, to preserve them off the planet. Helen quizzes Klaatu about his statement that he has come to save the Earth and discovers that he means to save the Earth from destruction by humankind. Meanwhile, the robot, named Gort by the military, is being examined in an underground facility. The robot transforms into a swarm of winged, insect-like, nanomachines that self-replicate as they consume everything in their path. The swarm starts to erase all trace of the human race. Hoping to persuade Klaatu to change his mind about humanity, Helen takes him to the home of Nobel Prize-winning Professor Banhart. They discuss how Klaatu's own race went through a drastic evolution to survive their own star's demise. Klaatu is impressed by the beauty of the music by Bach playing in the background. Klaatu finally realizes that he has misjudged humanity when he sees Helen comforting Jacob at his father's grave. They head for the sphere in Central Park to try to stop the swarm. Klaatu warns that even if he manages to stop the swarm, there will be a price to the human way of life. The swarm arrives and Jacob and Helen become infected by the nanomachines. Helen tells Klaatu to save Jacob and Klaatu draws the nanomachines into his body, reviving Jacob. Klaatu then walks through the swarm to the sphere, touching it moments before his body is consumed. The sphere deactivates the swarm, saving humanity, but at the expense of electrical activity on Earth, which is apparently all shut down. The giant sphere leaves the Earth. Cast: Keanu Reeves as Klaatu, an alien messenger in human form. Reeves dislikes remakes, but was impressed by the script, which he deemed a reimagining. He enjoyed the original film as a child and became fonder of it as an adult when he understood how relevant it was, but prefers this version because it lacked the contradictory message of Klaatu laying down the law, almost as though the alien had the bigger stick. Reeves acknowledged his Klaatu is inverted from the original, starting sinister and tough but becoming more human, whereas the original was more human than human, before revealing his big stick. In his ending speech, he compared the remake's Klaatu to the wrathful God who floods the world in the Old Testament, but is gentle and forgiving by the time of the New Testament. He spent many weeks revising the script, trying to make Klaatu's transition from alien in human form to one who appreciates their emotions and beliefs subtle and nuanced. Derrickson, the director, said that although Reeves would not use actions that are highly unusual or highly quirky, he nevertheless keeps you aware of the fact that this being you're walking through this movie with is not a human being. At Reeves' insistence, the classic line, Klaatu Barada Nikta, was added to the script after initially being omitted. The line was recorded many times, and it was decided to combine two recordings. One where Reeves said it normally, and a reverse version where he said the line backwards, creating an alien effect. Jennifer Connelly is Helen Benson, a famed astrobiologist at Princeton University, who was recruited by the government to study Klaatu. Connelly was Derrickson's first choice for the part. She is a fan of the original film and felt Patricia Neal's original portrayal of Helen was fabulous, but trusted the filmmakers with their reinterpretation of the story and of Helen, who was a secretary in the original. Connelly emphasized that Helen is amazed when she meets Klaatu, as she never believed she would encounter a sentient alien like him. After speculating on extraterrestrial life for so long, Connelly was dedicated to understanding her scientific jargon, with Seth Shostak stating she did everything short of writing a NASA grant application. Jaden Smith as Jacob Benson, Helen's rebellious 8-year-old stepson. His conflict with his stepmother was worsened by the death of his father, and he initially dislikes Klaatu, believing him to be a potential stepfather. Jacob replaces the character of Bobby in the original, and his relationship with Helen was written as a microcosm of how Klaatu comes to see humanity. The alien sees their cold and distant relationship as normal human behavior, and their reconciliation forces him to change his mind. Smith had met Keanu Reeves before, on the set of the Matrix sequels, which featured his mother Jada Pinkett Smith, although he was only 3 years old at the time. John Cleese's Professor Carl Barnhart, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist who specializes in the evolutionary basis of altruism. Helen takes Klaatu to him to further change his mind. The role was the most difficult to cast, and eventually the filmmakers decided to approach Cleese, noting, "Who would you rather make the argument to Klaatu for mankind than John Cleese, Stoff, a producer, had met Cleese a few times beforehand and had noted his intellect. The actor was surprised the filmmakers were interested in him, and decided playing a dramatic role would be easier than to play a comedic one at his age. He was often reminded to speed up his dialogue so that Reeves would not appear in synchronity with normal human speech patterns. Cleese said he is not interested in extraterrestrial life because he often philosophizes about the purpose of life and why humans are distracted by trivial matters. Cleese spoke about portraying abilities outside his own experience in the scene in which Klaatu corrects a formula Barnhart has written on the blackboard. The trouble is, I had to be able to write the equation, because Barnhart has been working on it for 60 years. I learned to carefully copy things down that mean nothing to me at all. In A Fish Called Wanda, I spoke a lot of Russian without having any idea what it means. John Hamm as Dr. Michael Granier, a NASA official who recruits Helen into his scientific team investigating Klaatu. Granier is fascinated by Klaatu, but is torn between his official obligation to detain the alien and protect his country. Hamm acknowledged science fiction was a niche genre when the original film was made, and that it used science fiction to make topical issues more approachable. Hamm had the same feelings for this remake. Originally, Hamm's character was French and named Mitchell. Although he is interested in math and science, Hamm found his technical dialogue difficult and had to fill in his lines repeatedly. Kathy Bates as Regina Jackson, the United States Secretary of Defense. Bates had only 2 weeks to film her scenes, so she often requested Derrickson act out her lines so she would directly understand his aims for her dialogue, rather than interpret vague directions. Kyle Chandler as John Driscoll, an official in the U.S. government, who goes down to check out the research on Gort, where his actions lead to the deaths of everyone in the base including himself, as the base is put into a lockdown. James Hong as Mr. Wu. Brandon T. Jackson as Target Tech. Production. Development in 1994, 20th Century Fox and Erwin Stoff had produced the successful Keanu Reeves film Speed. Stoff was at an office at the studio when he saw a poster for the 1951 film The Day the Earth Stood Still, which made him ponder a remake with Reeves as Klaatu. By the time David Scarpa started writing a draft of the script in 2005, Thomas Rothman was in charge of Fox and felt a responsibility to remake the film. Scarpa felt everything about the original film was still relevant, but changed the allegory from nuclear war to environmental damage because the specifics of how we now have the capability to destroy ourselves have changed. Scarpa noted the recent events of Hurricane Katrina in 2005 informed his mindset when writing the screenplay. He scrapped Klaatu's speech at the conclusion of the story because audiences today are unwilling to tolerate that. People don't want to be preached to about the environment. We try to avoid having our alien looking out over the garbage in the lake and crying a silent tear from the 1970s Keep America Beautiful ads. Director Scott Derrickson admired the original film's director Robert Wise, whom he met as a film student. He generally dislikes remakes, but he enjoyed the script, which he decided was a retelling of the story and not a true remake. He also explained that The Day the Earth Stood Still is not a widely seen classic film, unlike The Wizard of Oz, which he would not bother remaking. Derrickson's benchmark was Philip Kaufman's 1978 remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Klaatu was made more menacing than in the original, because the director felt he had to symbolize the more complex era of the 2000s. There was debate over whether to have Klaatu land in Washington, D.C., as in the original, but Derrickson chose New York City because he liked the geometry of Klaatu's sphere landing in Central Park. Derrickson also did not write in Gort's original backstory, which was already absent from the script he read. He already thought the script was a good adaptation and didn't want the negative connotations of fascism from the original film. Astronomer Seth Shostak served as scientific consultant on the film, reviewed the script several times for errors, gave suggestions for making the scientists appear less dry, and noted that they would refer to one another on a first-name basis. He said, "Real scientists don't describe an object entering the solar system as notable for the fact that it was not moving in an asteroidal ellipse, but moving at nearly 3 times 10 to the 7th meters per second. More likely, they would say that there was a goddamned rock headed our way." Filming took place from December 12, 2007, to March 19, 2008. At Vancouver Film Studios, Vancouver Forum, Deer Lake, Jericho Park, and Simon Fraser University. The film was originally scheduled for release on May 9, 2008, but it was delayed until December 12, 2008, because filming commenced later than scheduled. By the time pre-production had started, Scarp had written 40 drafts of the script. The film was mostly shot on sets because it was winter in Vancouver. Derrickson was fascinated by color schemes. He chose blue, green and orange as the primary colors for The Day the Earth Stood Still. The missile silo converted by the military for experimenting on Gort emphasized gray and orange, which was inspired by an image of lava flowing through a gray field. Derrickson opted to shoot on traditional film, and rendered the colors in post-production to make them more subtle, for realism. To film Barnhart and Clartier writing equations on a blackboard, general relativity sums were drawn by Marco Peloso from the University of Minnesota, and William Hiscock of Montana State University in faint pencil marks. Keanu Reeves and John Cleese drew over these in chalk. As Fox had a mandate to become a carbon-neutral company by 2011, The Day the Earth Stood Still's production had an environmentally friendly regimen. Whether it was because of this movie thematically or it was an accident of time, there were certain things production-wise we've been doing and been asked to do and so on, said Erwin Stoff. To prevent the wasting of paper, concept art, location stills and costume tests were posted on a website created by the production for crew members to reference. Costumes were kept for future Fox productions or given to homeless shelters, rather than thrown away. Hybrid vehicles were used and crew members had orders to turn off their car engines if they sat in their vehicles for more than 3 minutes. Effects Weta Digital created the majority of the effects, with additional work by Cinesite and Flash Filmworks. The machines of Clartier's people have a biological basis rather than a mechanical one, as Derrickson theorized that their mastery of ecology would demonstrate their level of sophistication. Derrickson deemed a modern audience would find the original's flying saucer amusingly obsolete and unique to the original's milieu. The director also noted that the original The Day the Earth Stood Still had influenced many films, so his technicians needed to bring new ideas to the remake. The effects team approached the new spacecraft's design as interdimensional portals resembling orbs. The script had specified the inside of the orbs as a white limbo-white thing, but visual effects consultant Jeff O'Koon explained this was deleted for being too cheesy. Derrickson felt not showing the inside of the ship, unlike the original, would make the audience more curious, as well as computer-generated spheres, such as Clartier's 300-foot ship, or a 3,000-foot tall orb that rises from the sea. 700-pound spheres, 9 feet in diameter, were sculpted by Custom Plastics, which built spheres for Disney theme parks. The spheres were split in two to make transportation easier. It was difficult placing lights inside them without making them melt. The visual effects team looked at natural objects, including water droplets and the surfaces of Jupiter and Saturn for the sphere's texture. Derrickson emphasized a trinity-like relationship between the sphere, Clartier, and Gort. Clartier is initially depicted as a radiant focus of sentient light. He is then depicted as a 7-foot-tall gray, walking womb shape which finally takes on a completely human appearance. The filmmakers conceived the transitional form because they pondered the idea of humans mistaking space suits for alien skin. Computer-generated imagery and practical effects achieved the transformation. Todd Masters directed the creation of the alien form, using thermal plastic and silicone. The script described Gort as nanotechnology by the time the director signed on, although it did not specify Gort's appearance. The 15th draft of the script had depicted the robot as a four-legged totem that stands upright after firing its weapon beam. Okun explained there were many more horrific or amazing concepts, but it made sense that the robot would assume a familiar human shape. He cited the monolith from 2001, A Space Odyssey as an inspiration for Gort's texture, noting, "It's a simple shape, it has no emotion, it just simply is," which makes Gort more frightening because the audience cannot tell what he is thinking. The animators estimated the computer-generated robot as 28 feet tall, whereas in the original he was played by the 7-foot 7-inch tall Lock Martin. Gort's computer model was programmed to reflect light, and the filmmakers spent time on motion capture sessions to guide the performance. An actor wore weights on his hands and feet, allowing the animators to bring a sense of weight and power to Gort. His destructive capabilities were based on locust swarms, although the idea of metal-eating insects goes back to Stephen Vincent Bennett's 1933 poem, Metropolitan Nightmare.